Good morning and welcome to day 14 of 21 Days of Spiritual Success. My name is Monica Reyes and I am a spiritual success coach, taking you through 21 days of spiritual development, making small shifts to create really big change in your life. So yesterday we talked about Relationships 101. We spoke about what types of relationships, spiritual relationships there were, and the purpose of relationships in our life. And today we are getting into practical sort of applications of really bringing spirituality and integrating it into our daily relationships and into our daily lives, how to be more authentic and how to heal the relationships that we have. And we're going to go through, this is going to be divided into 3 parts. And we're going to go through all 3 elements. So the first element is vulnerability, second is compassion, and the third is forgiveness. And as I was preparing this, I was trying to stick them all into one, but they're so important. These are probably, I would say, the most important because it really works on not only just the relationship, but because it really ends up working on yourself. So it's really, really important. So I'm going to devote a day to each. So today we're going to get into vulnerability and what it means to have an authentic relationship. So authenticity is being really the truest you, the truest expression of you, no white lies, no exaggerations, just simply you. And it's showing up this way every single day. And it takes work. But it's actually, this is your natural state. To be authentic and to be you is really where that's where you have your most power. And so it actually ends up bringing you more energy and more vitality because it actually takes energy to be someone else. It creates a lot of inner conflict because your soul, the deepest part of you, knows the truth, and you are being something else, and it's creating conflict. And it takes energy to put up these walls. It takes energy to put on these masks. And so you does end up affecting your energy levels. It also brings more happiness and no regrets. There was a book by Bronnie Ware, this hospice nurse, and she wrote a book about, she interviewed all of her dying patients, and she found out that the most common regret that they had was the regret of not living their truest life and not being their truest them. Living the life that they felt like they wish they had had the courage to have lived their truth versus the life that society wanted them to live, or maybe the life of others or the life that others expect them to live. So, when you're fully aligned and you are living the life that you're meant to live and the life that you really, really deeply want, that's where true happiness is. And then you also, by being authentic, because you're being you, it does just automatically bring more self-love and happiness. But when you're you are acknowledging the fact that you're enough. When you're not being you and when you're putting up a wall and you're not letting people in, or you're putting on this mask, or you're pretending everything's okay when it's not, you're acknowledging that, you have to tell a story, which means that your life isn't good the way that it is, or that you aren't good enough the way that you are. But when you're the opposite and you show up the way that you are and the way that things really are, then you're acknowledging the fact that you are worthy and you are good enough. So this is where vulnerability comes from. So vulnerability is the dare to be seen. There was actually a TED Talk by Brene Brown. If you haven't already seen it, it's called The Power of Vulnerability. Super duper awesome. She's a researcher, and she tells us about this power of vulnerability and where she got it from. So when in this TED Talk, she encourages us to have the courage to be imperfect, to have the strength to be who we are, and connection is why we're here. And in order to have deep connection, we have to be seen and show others who we are. And it takes guts. It's not easy. So the number one obstacle through this is shame. And shame is the fear of disconnection. It's a primitive emotion. It's universal. The only people that don't have it are those that are psychopaths. And when Brene Brown went through and took a look, when she did her research and she surveyed people, all different types of people, ranges in all different statuses, and she saw that those that were able to get over the fear of disconnection or the fear of shame, she saw that there were 4 things. One was that they were able to recognize, that they were even that they even have this fear. So that's awareness. Number 2 was recognizing their own thoughts. So self-awareness, their thoughts, their triggers. Number 3 was had a support system. They actually had somebody that they trusted, that they were able to talk to. And then number 4 was the ability to have vulnerability, which is why vulnerability is so important. It allows you to get over this shame, this feeling of feeling like you're flawed and that you're not worthy. And it's not easy because it's an emotional risk, right? You're putting yourself completely out there, and it's easier, I personally feel like, to be rejected in other ways than to be rejected by your own emotions, because we tend to reject that first anyway. It's not easy to deal with our emotions. It's something that we avoid all of the time. So, and what's crazy is once we put this wall up and these masks on, it becomes a reality. We start to believe it's who we are. You know, you shift your story just a little bit, and you tell it so many times you actually believe it's you when it's not. And then you find yourself, you know, living incredibly inauthentically because of this one point, and then it affects so much, right? So I made a commitment to myself a long time ago to be authentic, and because I used to be, like I mentioned before, a person that wasn't happy for who she was, always wanted to be someone else. And then once I realized that there was power in it, in this being me, and just, you know, and it's not, it wasn't an act of self-love. I made the commitment to be me no matter what. And it's so much easier to do that because I don't have to think about it. You know, I can just be me. It's just easy. It becomes, it's our natural state. And I've gained a deep fondness for myself. And as a business owner, it's been the key to impact, because energy is real. People can feel when you're being inauthentic, and vulnerability gives people permission to be vulnerable. It's not, like I said, it's not an easy thing, but when you show up and you say something vulnerable about yourself, people automatically think, wow, like she was able to do that, and she wasn't afraid of it. She wasn't afraid, or this person wasn't afraid of not, you know, of how I would react. But you know, and then they're all of a sudden they're thinking about how they're reacting, and they're, you know, all of a sudden finding compassion for me because I'm being vulnerable, and it teaches them to be less afraid to be the same. It's really a beautiful ripple effect, which is why it's so important. It deserves a whole day. And the only reason we might lie or tell a white lie or anything other than being ourselves is because we have our own expectations and our own standards of the way our life should be. You know, I had, you know, back when I was younger, I was like, when I'm 28, 29, I'm going to graduate from medical school, and I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be married, I'm going to be doing all of this, right? So as you can imagine, to my surprise, when I turned 30 years old and I was still living at home because I had moved to Miami, and I'd suffered a great deal of trauma and lots of different things in my life. I was in a really bad relationship, and I'd moved to Miami, and I was still healing from that, and Miami swallowed me up whole. My parents had actually gone through so many health issues. So I moved back to Orlando, and I found myself at age 30 at home, from starting off from scratch, square one, and I graduated law school and being like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? So, you know, these are these expectations and these standards that we set for ourselves, but life will take you in all different directions. And this is why, you know, when you see this whole practice as a whole, it's not, you know, yes, you are being vulnerable, but then it's the idea of like letting go and surrendering, and you start to see where all of these little practices do start to fit in your life as one big 360. But it's really just all about expectation. If you put that all down, then you will find more love and more compassion for yourself, and you'll find more for others. This is also how we fall in love. You know, it's hard to fall in love with somebody or allow someone to fall in love with you when they don't know who you are. So putting that down allows people to really deeply love you, and that's a form that's sometimes hard as well as the act of receiving. And so we're going to get into these steps. So, but the rewards are immeasurable. So how can we be more vulnerable? Step number 1 is be more real. If you don't know something, say you don't know. If you're afraid of something, say you're afraid of it. If you love something, say you love it. If you're scared, you know, it's like, it's coming up and being you. It's okay to not know something. It's okay to be afraid. And it's just acknowledging that, right? We tend to allow others to be like, hey, it's okay to be afraid, right? But on the other side, we might not feel the same about us. But it's just accepting our feelings, accepting where we are right now, and then being real. Number 2, being okay with failure. So fear of failing was a big one for me as a perfectionist, and getting over this was huge because it allowed me, when you're putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, you are accepting the fact that you may fail. And I'm not talking about just being vulnerable in the way of people, because yes, you can be vulnerable by sharing something, but when you start a business, that's being vulnerable. You're putting your risks out there. You're allowing yourself to possibly fail. You're doing something that you normally wouldn't do. You're putting your wall down and you're doing something that you really want or really love or really desire. And you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable out there. And what if you fail? What would people think? You know, for me, my transition from being a lawyer to a coach, I mean, the word spirituality has a big, stigma to it. It does. I mean, and that was a big risk for me to say, you know what? I'm going to put down the Esquire and instead I'm going to bring up the word spirituality. And it was like, what would people think? Oh my gosh. And it was something I had to get over. But at the end of the day, this is my happiness and it's who I am. And if I deny it, then I'm denying myself. And so I had to just allow myself to just be me and not be afraid of failure and not be afraid of whatever anybody else thought. Because when I'm 80 years old, what am I going to care about? I mean, if people talk about it or whatever, is that really what's going to stick? Or is it the fact that I was courageous and I did what I really wanted and I chose my own happiness and I chose to love myself? I think that's what really matters, right? That's what I'm going to look back on. That's where my legacy is. That's what my daughter's going to remember. All right. So number 3 is ask for help. So this one also not so easy. It's an act of receiving. It's an act of allowing others to give you a gift. When you are not asking for help and you're not receiving help, if somebody reaches out to you and gives you a gift, a compliment, or reaches out their hand to help you and you deny it, you're denying their gift to you, which is, that's all spirituality. You want to allow people to give you that gift. It's not only, it's healing them and it's healing you. It's very beautiful. But just, and then also allowing yourself to ask for help. If you don't know something, if you're afraid of something and you need help, ask for it. I'm not afraid to ask for directions. I'm not afraid to ask for help if I need to. It wasn't always that easy for me, but you start to feel like, what's the big deal? It's just, all it is ego. All it is pride. And I'm all about efficiency and I'm all about connection. And if you want more vulnerability, like this is, you have to just try it once, try it today. Get over rejection. Rejection, is there anything you can do to practice rejection? Sales is really great for this, because like I said before, emotional rejection, I feel personally is probably one of the hardest types of rejection. And there was actually lots of experiments that took place where they've said that they've actually been able to measure that that actual rejection, the pain from rejection was very similar to physical pain and that your body responses were similar. So that's, rejection is a big deal, but sorry about that. You can get over rejection by practicing being rejected. Practice being rejected. And this is really easy to do if you're a business owner or you're, making sales calls, and eventually you get over it and you realize, what's the worst thing that can happen? They can say no, but at least I tried. And the feeling of getting over the rejection, especially if this is something you're afraid of, it's like, woof, not a big deal. All right, not bad. I can do this. Let's keep going. And then you just build yourself through little baby steps. All right, so today I'm going to challenge you to be bold, right? To be who you are. So today, do something vulnerable. Say something you've been holding on to. Do something you've been waiting, holding back on. Tell somebody how you really feel. Be vulnerable in your stories. If you're a speaker, bring some vulnerability into it. It's incredibly powerful. And just practice this. Practice being vulnerable. It's really, really beautiful. And you'll see the rewards. You'll see how deep your connections, that the relationships become. And you'll also see the response, when you're vulnerable. And, I'm vulnerable. I try to be as vulnerable as I can on social media because it's inspiring and it inspires me. Do it with an open heart, with no expectations whatsoever, but you'll see that the response that you get is really, really beautiful. and you are giving people permission to do the same, because if you're afraid of being vulnerable, I know that there are other people that are afraid as well. I know that this is a shared, shame is a shared, it's a universal emotion, and a lot of people experience it. And so by you stepping up and being courageous and doing this, it really, really does go a long way. And you'll see the ripple effect of others, being able to, and you'll see the universe will reward you in some way, because it is an active, it's an active spiritual, development. You're growing spiritually when you're vulnerable, because we're here on this earth to connect. 13.8 billion years ago, the universe started with just one point. But if you notice, everything connected, everything bonded, particles, molecules, atoms, everything bonded and connected with something of similar essence and substance. And so that is how the universe transcends. And so we are the same. We come from that. We come from the very beginning of that. And so we are meant for connection and to deeply, deeply, deeply bond and to deeply connect. And this is a step into that direction. All right, so thank you so much for joining me. If you have any more questions or you want to share anything on this topic, I'd love to hear it. And stay tuned for tomorrow at 10:30. We're going to talk about compassion, and then after that, we'll talk about forgiveness. These are all three elements of having a deep and authentic relationship. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a beautiful Monday. I hope everybody has a very productive and successful day. Thank you very much. See you later.